Let's go over the parts list for the Panosaurus. First you have the rotator, then you have the camera mounting block, the metal arm, a large metal washer, a large clamping knob, a bubble level, a wing nut style clamping knob, one nut, two bolts, 6 small washers, and 2 3x5 cards. One's just a regular 3x5 and the other is been turned into a ruler. And that's your parts. To find the distance to the center of your lens from the base of your camera, you're going to need to set your camera on a flat surface. And if your camera tilts like mine does, you're going to need to put a little weight on it to make sure that the base is perfectly flat. Then you take your 3x5 card and a sharp pencil, and you find a spot on the lens at the bottom and make a little mark. And you find a spot at the top of the lens and make a mark. And that's all there is to it. There are a couple of common questions that people have when they're trying to find the distance from the base of their camera to the center of their lens using the 3x5 card. One of them is, do I need to have the card directly over the center of the lens before I make my marks on the card? The answer to that question is no. You can have the card anywhere over the lens and you will get the same results. What's important, however, is that you choose the same sort of position at the upper part of the lens as you do at the bottom part of the lens to make your marks. So if I have chosen this particular little spot of the lens right here to make my mark on the card, then I need to find the counterpart to that part of the lens at the bottom and make my mark on the card in that position. That's the only thing that's important to know about this procedure. If you're like me and don't happen to have a millimeter ruler handy, there's a 3x5 card that's included with the Panosaurus Rex, and if you'll just take some sharp scissors and cut very carefully along the outside lines, you will have yourself a nifty little millimeter ruler. Now that I've made my little millimeter ruler, I'm going to use it to find the midpoint between the two marks that I've made on my 3x5 card. Notice that I've put an X at the bottom of my 3x5 card to remind me which is the bottom so I don't get mixed up. So I take my little ruler, I put the end on my first mark, then I look and see where my second mark lies, and on mine it appears to be 56 millimeters. So that means my midpoint is going to be 28 millimeters. So I just need to make a new mark now on my card at the 28 millimeter mark. And this represents now the midpoint. There's one more mark that you need to make on your 3x5 card. Take your camera mounting block and place the left edge of the block on the center point mark that you've just made on the card. Now take a sharp pencil and make one more mark on the right side of the camera mounting block. This new mark that you've made is the important mark on this card. It represents the distance from the base of your camera to the place where the metal arm of the Panosaurus Rex will be mounted to the rotator. Now it's time to attach your metal arm to your rotator arm. To do this, you take your metal arm and slide the large metal washer onto the second long bolt on the metal arm. Then you use the wing nut style clamping knob on this bolt. Just thread it on a couple of turns. Next, you attach your rotator to your tripod head, either directly with 1/4-inch threads if your tripod head has 1/4-inch threads, or you can use a quick release plate on the Panosaurus rotator and then attach it to your tripod like that. Next, you slide the metal arm onto the rotator, just up about midway, and then tighten your clamping knob like so. Now that you've attached the metal arm to the rotator, you're going to need your 3x5 card because you'll use it to determine where your metal arm is set up on the rotator. To do this, you're going to be using the metal arm setup mark, the final mark that you made on the card, and you're going to align that mark right here in this little, with this little indentation that's on the rotator, just below the large metal washer here. So you want to set your card so that that metal arm setup mark is perfectly centered over this little indentation. Next, you're going to want to loosen the clamping knob on the metal arm, slide the metal arm down in the slot until it touches, and then tighten the clamping knob back up. Next, you need to tilt the 3x5 card up so that the end is flush with the metal arm and the bottom of the card is also flush with the rotator arm. Now check to make sure the metal arm setup mark is still perfectly aligned with the indentation on the rotator. If this is not the case, you will then need to loosen the clamping knob and keep moving the metal arm again and again until you have reached a perfect alignment. Now that your metal arm is in the proper position, take a sharp pencil and make a mark on the rotator arm along the outer edge of the metal arm. Then loosen the clamping knob and remove the metal arm from the rotator. Next, remove one of the little white stickers that came in your parts bag and very carefully place the sticker on the rotator along the edge of the pencil mark you have just made. It is also a good idea to make an arrow mark on the sticker to indicate which edge of the sticker is the edge that touches the pencil line. Now you want to put the metal arm back on the rotator arm. This time put the washer and clamping knob on the long bolt closest to the end of the metal arm. Then once again slide the arm onto the rotator and align the edge of the metal arm with the edge of the sticker you just put on the rotator arm. Then do a quick check to make sure the arm is positioned perfectly square on the rotator. Next, take the large clamping knob along with 4 washers and the nut from the parts bag and slide all 4 washers onto the clamping knob and then thread the nut just a few turns onto the knob. Now pull one of the washers out so that it touches the nut on the end of the knob. Now slide the clamping knob onto the metal arm so that one washer is on the side of the metal arm that has the ruled white lines. Tighten the nut until it makes contact with the metal arm, then loosen the nut about a half turn, so when you turn the clamping knob, it rotates freely. Next, take the camera mounting block and place it onto the threads of the clamping knob. Make sure the camera mounting block is facing the direction shown in this video. Next, take a bolt and one of the small washers and place the bolt into the end threads of the camera mounting block. Tighten the bolt just enough to still be able to move the block when finished. You need to always have at least one bolt in one of the threaded holes of the camera mounting block to keep the block securely in place. Notice there are 2 places on the camera mounting block for bolts to be placed. Depending on how far forward or back on the metal arm your particular camera and lens needs to be, will determine which hole to place one of the bolts into. Now it's time to mount your camera to the Panosaurus Rex. Simply locate the position of your camera's tripod hole and then very carefully thread the clamping knob securely into the body of your camera. Be sure the knob screws in freely and you are not somehow damaging the threads of your tripod hole by screwing in at a slight angle. When finished, check to make sure that the back of your camera is squarely aligned with the small backstop block.